God praise and thank him for this day, then this opportunity that he's given us to share the words of grace and truth. We're going to be talking about this morning a study that's entitled In the World, but Not of the World. The Lord actually said for us to come out from amongst them, said the Lord. But why? There is a real reason, a good reason for us coming out from amongst the world. But we must understand that this is from God's point of view of how his people begin to be whom he desires for them to be. And it starts with coming out from amongst the world and understanding that we are a group of people from God's point of view that are not normal. We are a group of people that are, from God's point of view, that are set aside. That everyone doesn't choose this manner of life. Then you can understand why the Lord insists that we come ye out from amongst them. The United Nations estimate that there is approximately 7.8 billion people that live in the world today on this planet that we call Earth. If I look at some numbers back to that same number back in 1960, just by comparison, the Earth's population was estimated to be a little over 3 billion people. So compared to the 7 billion people, you can see that since 1960, Earth's population is more than double. Part of the world that we know, we call the United States. And the United States has approximately 331 million people who call the U.S. home today. What does that mean? Well, in this continent that we live in this portion of the world that we live in, everything that's right and wrong, everything that's good and bad, everything that's happening that we experience in this portion of the world, it comes from or is the fruit of the ethics, values, and beliefs that are held by the people living in it. Now, I'm just going to point out one example of this. It is considered to be, from a population perspective, that most of the people, almost half of the people here, are people who believe in the Lord. But also there is another group of people that is believed, that have a set of beliefs as well. Their beliefs, their values, and ethics drive their behavior as well. And that segment of this population in the United States are known as racists. They're called by many different groups, or hate groups. They're called by many different names. And in almost all cases, the groups are groups that, for the most part, see themselves as being more than others who are of color, who might not be male. So what I'm trying to get you just to see, just giving you those two examples, a group that thinks, that desires to be followers of that which is associated with the Lord, and then a group that expressly believes that they are superior and should have more, and does everything to try to ensure that they have more than everybody else who is not like them. There are many other types of groups in that continental 331 million people that live in the U.S. today, but I'm just trying to give you that perspective, because what I'm trying to help you see is the reason the Lord said for us to come out from among them. Because what drives those experiences, those who are associated with the Lord or religion, is that there is a thought that they would love. They would demonstrate love. that 48, 50%. They thought they would demonstrate love. But a strand of that other group, extreme group that I indicated, although they don't make up the entire other 52%, they just represent a small strand. But I'm just trying to give you the spectrum. One group is talking about love, the other group is talking about hate. But each group's values and ethics and their beliefs drive their conversation, it drives their behavior, it drives their thinking about life. What we see and what we experience in our vineyard today, or what you may call the conditions of the world, of society, of the United States, or of your part of the United States that you live in, the state that you live in, the condition of the county that you live in, the condition of the city that you live in, that condition is the result. Everything that is right, everything that is wrong, everything that's good, everything that's bad, in that part of the vineyard has come from or is the fruit of the ethics, values, and beliefs that are held by people that are living in it. There are some places where if you were not of a certain color, you were not of a certain socioeconomic background, that it's frowned upon if you go into that area or if you spend much time into that area, except for you to be doing certain acceptable things that they would want you to do in that area, like serve them perhaps. What I'm trying to get you to see, that way of, that style of living, that quality of life is perpetuated by the ethics, values, and beliefs of the people that are living in that particular area. And everything that is done, that's the fruit of the labor. That's what produces what people see in that part of the world, in your city, in your area. The ethics, values, and beliefs that are held by those people that are leading businesses in those areas. Whether those businesses are for profit or non-profit, those people also, their values and ethics and their beliefs are influencing the fruit. They're producing some fruit as well that gets mixed into what we call the current state of our lives, the current state of our world. It's the culmination of all of those things coming together. In this country, it's been called the melting pot for that very reason, where all of these people come together, all of these different ways of thinking come together, and then something emerges based off of all of the values and ethics of all of those people. Something emerges, some fruit emerges that produce what we call the quality of life in this portion of the world. Just because things are this way in this portion of the world, it doesn't mean that things will be this way in another part of the world. And that is definitely the case. But it's all driven by the same truth. It's all driven by the ethics, values, and beliefs that are held by those people leading businesses, whether it's for profit or not for profit. And they're doing things that produce what we may call fruit. What they do creates traditions. It creates laws. It creates social rules. It creates regulations that shape how people act and live. I'm reminded of recently there was talk about a law that was put into place, and it only affected New York City, but it was put into place and it had to do with how people were being stop and frisk. But that didn't affect people in Florida or Georgia or specifically in Jacksonville or McDonough. But it affected people if you happen to be in New York But because of the ethics and the values of the people, the businesses, the people leading those businesses, whether for profit or nonprofit, those ethics and values produced a law that was called stop and frisk. And it's been the subject of a lot of conversation because of the way that when you get to the individual people who are supposed to carry it out, apparently the individual people's values and ethics that are different have been implementing that law in a wildly different way. The things that a person believes that might not be the leader of the business, but that person may be somebody who has been hired to carry out, to ensure that it's compliant. Where that person's values and ethics may cause them to not represent what the spirit of that law was about. What I'm trying to get you to see is that the quality of life, the state of our society is as a result of people being compliant to and being a part of and operating consistently according to the laws and the rules and the regulations that have been put forth to shape how people live. And I always use the example, because it's so prevalent, of the Jim Crow laws, because those laws were in effect in the South. And those laws were intended to affect the lives of every person. They were intended to affect the lives of a particular group of people. But those laws came into being because of the ethics, values, and beliefs that were held by people who were in a position of power, in a position of leadership. That's a more accurate term. Because they were given a position of leadership, they used their ethics and their values and their beliefs to create laws that came up with a set of rules that had an adverse impact on a segment of the people in that area, causing the quality of life for the people in that area of the world. And this happens across the country. There was even some parts of the area, some parts of the country where they had a law called the sundown law, where if you of a certain background, you were not of the preferred background of the people that they prefer in that area, that if by sundown you were in their area and you were unwanted, it gave the people who live in that area the right to take matters into their own hands. What I'm trying to get you to see and understand is that when laws get created this way, when regulations get created this way, when rules get created this way, those rules shape how the quality of life that people experience in a given area. But those rules are based on the ethics and the values and beliefs of the people who create them. George Wallace was a person, and I'm just giving you some examples so that you can clearly get this, was a person who you would not expect that person to create encourage any rules, any laws to be put into place that would support the fair treatment of African Americans in Alabama. You would not expect him to have put forth any laws. Why? Because of his ethics, his values, and his belief set. So because he was in a position of power, he was able to create laws that disadvantage African Americans and females and anybody that was not a part of a certain characteristic that looked like him. Today, there is a person who is in the White House who thinks the same way, to advantage no one but himself, and to allow those who are around him that agree with him to advantage themselves. But the same is true. What they choose to put in place, they put laws and practices in place, and those things get operationalized, and if people begin living by them, their quality of lives begin to be affected by the words that are said, by the things that are done. This is what it means to be in the world. If you go back in time and look at different points in time in past in the history, in Egypt as a primary example, if you look at these times in past in the Babylonian captivity, there were things that were put into place, rules that were put into place, practices that were put into place, but they were put into place based on the values and the ethics of the people who were in leadership roles. And that rule impacted the quality of life of the people who were expected to be compliant with it, for good or for bad. In most cases, it was bad. That same thing is still going on today. And with uncertainty at every turn and the difficulty being faced by mankind in the economy, financially, in health, and in the home, what people soon realize is that everything that glitters is not gold. Everything that appears to be for you is really not for you. Everything that is offered to you as a good offer is not always a good offer. That everything that is suggested by someone or advised for you to do in your vineyard to obtain some good or to obtain an improvement that you are seeking, it's not always good for you. It's not always good for you to be a part of. There are some things that may be suggested for you to be a part of. It's not always good for you to be a part of those things that the world may offer, simply because you have to consider the source. And what about the source you must consider? It's their ethics, their values, and their beliefs. Because that's going to give you an insight as to whether or not there is good, whether or not there is intended truly good there.
Oh, praise be to God, from whom all blessings flow. It is our prayer at Clay Family Ministries that your life has been increased with the increase of God through this study. We appreciate and are thankful for your fellowship during this life skills study segment.